What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. And in this video, we're going to be wrapping up the 500 cubic inch big block that we've been building for the Cutlass for stage 3. Now in our last video, we finished up the rotating assembly by putting in the rods and pistons onto our crankshaft, ultimately finishing up the short block. But in this video, we're going to be completely finishing the long block for this motor. That includes our oil pump, timing assembly, basically everything we need to get this motor up and running. So let's go ahead and jump into the content. But before we do that, don't forget to leave a like below and hit subscribe for more videos like this. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so we're going to first start off by installing our cam in the motor. For this build, we went with an Iskandarian hydraulic roller cam. This cam specifically has 680 thousandths lift on the lobes. So you can see here that this is definitely a very radical cam and is going to help us make some serious horsepower in this motor. Now this cam does go from 3,500 all the way up to 7,000 RPMs. So with that kind of RPMs in a big block like this, they're definitely going to be a very radical setup. So we're going to start by lubing up our lobes here with this Iski lube they provide with the cam, and then we're going to put some oil on these guys here just to make sure everything's copacetic and goes in the motor properly. So let's go ahead and start installing the cam. Alright, so I just want to give you a quick look at how much you really want to lube up these lobes on this cam. Just because this is a hydraulic roller cam and those lobes sit really high, when it goes inside the journal here, you don't want them to scrape at all. So you want to make sure all this is really lubricated well. So you can see here, this is just about how much lube you want to put on this thing. Just make sure it's really lubed up before you put it in the motor. So now let's go ahead and put the cam in the motor. Alright, just like that, we got the cam installed inside the motor. Again, with the cam that has this much lift, and really just a rule in general, is you want to be careful when installing it so you don't scrape your cam bearings inside the motor itself. But as you can see, this puppy is installed and I am so excited to hear this thing run. It's gonna chop like crazy and it's just gonna sound awesome. So next we're gonna go ahead and flip the block around, put in our oil pump, and then we're going to install the actual motor mounts and then our head studs and go from there. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we went ahead and we got our oil pump ready to be installed. So we got the oil pump pickup put into the oil pump itself, and this is a milling high flow high performance oil pump. So this is going to make sure we get enough oil pressure, probably well over 70 pounds of oil pressure into this big block. And then we also have our oil pump drive rod. Now if you're not familiar already, your actual distributor itself at the end here goes on to the oil pump drive rod and effectively drives the oil pump. So you can see here when you turn this, it'll turn the internals of the oil pump itself and operate the oil pump. So we're going to go ahead and get this puppy bolted into the block and then we'll be good to go. So let's go ahead and install that and go from there. Alright, and just like that, we got our oil pump installed into the motor here. So this is looking awesome. We are also able to bolt on the actual motor mounts themselves. So we got those all bolted down. As far as the torque spec goes, this is your main bolt that you're going to bolt the oil pump to the actual motor with. They call for 65 foot-pounds of torque, so we got that torque down. And the oil pump is now installed. So we're going to go ahead and flip the motor back around and we're going to go ahead and put our head studs in. So let's go ahead and put the studs in. Alright, so we got the motor turned back around. Now we can go ahead and take our ARP head studs and we can start getting these installed. Now the main reason why I'm using these head studs is primarily because it really allows for a perfect fit when the cylinder head gets installed onto the head gasket itself. It doesn't allow for any player movement as the studs act as a guide for the heads. So it gets a complete seal against the head gasket and make sure that there's a perfect seal. So we're going to go ahead and get the head studs put in the block and then let's go from there. Alright, so we went ahead and we got the studs put into the motor. Now that those are all installed, this thing is looking insane. Ready to have the cylinder heads put on at this point. Meanwhile, we also went ahead and got the motor timed by putting in our timing assembly. So this is a double roller chain, very heavy duty, meant for high horsepower applications like this. Like I said, we did get the motor timed, so it's a pretty complicated process, but basically you just time each cylinder according to that with the cam and everything else. So this is a degree sheet that shows how many degrees we have for each cylinder and just basically how the motor is timed. So now that we have the motor timed, we got our timing assembly good, we got the head studs in, we can go ahead and put our oil pan on the bottom end, get the cylinder heads put in, front cover to cover all this up of course, and then we can basically finish up the long block after we put on the water pump and everything else. So we're going to go ahead and put the cylinder heads on after the front cover and then we're going to go from there. So let's do that. So we went ahead and we got the motor turned around, went ahead and used some silicone under our gaskets here and just laid it all across. So now we have our rear main gasket installed. We also have our oil pan gasket installed. And then we got that front timing cover put on. It looks awesome. So super excited how this is turning out. Now we're gonna go ahead and install our oil pans. We went with a Moroso kick-out oil pan for this block. This is gonna look awesome on it. So now we're gonna go ahead and get this put on and then turn the motor around and put the cylinder heads on. So let's go ahead and go there. All right, so we went ahead and we got the kick-out oil pan installed on the block now. So you can see all that is looking great. Again, this is a Moroso pan, so definitely high-end, really good for this application. So now that we got the oil pan on, we're going to go ahead and turn the motor around. We're going to get the cylinder heads installed on the block, and then after that, we'll get the water pump on there, and long block will basically be done. So let's go ahead and do that. So we got the motor turned around. Now that we got that all done, we got the actual head gaskets themselves installed. These are a 3-piece Cometic head gaskets, so definitely want to make sure there's a good seal on this, which these are going to provide. So we got the head gaskets on. Now we're going to go ahead and grab the heads themselves and then install them onto the block. So let's go ahead and grab the heads and put them on the block. All right, so we got our high performance big block cylinder heads here. I actually had these resurfaced, and I also had new exhaust and intake valves put into them. So these things are looking great. We also installed a set of Isky valve springs, retainers, and keepers on them. So these puppies are ready to be put onto the motor. So we're gonna go ahead and take these, put them on the motor, torque them down, and then they'll be installed. So let's go ahead and get these things installed. All right, so we got the heads put on the motor. We were able to torque everything down to spec. So as far as the spec sheet goes, we have it here in front of us. So you can see here we start off 1, 2, and then 3, 4, and accordingly just across the actual head itself. Now as far as the torque sequence itself, we go 25, then 50 foot-pounds, and then we finish off each nut with 80 foot-pounds of torque. So now both cylinder heads are installed on the motor. With that being said, the long block is almost done. We still got to put the actual lifters on, roller rockers, and an intake manifold just to completely button everything up. So we're going to go do that next, but the cylinder heads are on, so let's go ahead and go there. All right, so now that we got the cylinder heads on the motor, we can go ahead and start installing our lifters. Now we pre-lubricated the valley here with some oil just to get all the lifter holes filled with oil. Now as far as the lifters themselves go, we got these Isky lifters that are made from Johnson lifters for Isky. Now these are a roller lifter, very high-end racing products, so you want to make sure, especially with this cam, we got the Isky racing cam, you have the perfect roller lifters to go with the roller cam. So these are going to be awesome. These are definitely going to work very well for this application. Now as far as the installation goes, we basically submerge the lifters in a bucket of oil, and then we go here into the actual lifter valleys, and you just insert them in there accordingly, and that's it. So we're going to go ahead and put these in the motor, and then we can go from there. So let's do that. All right, so we got the lifters installed inside the motor now. With these being hydraulic roller lifters, you can actually take a look inside the motor, and you can see here when the cam turns around, it actually rolls on the roller of the lifter itself. So this is definitely gonna make some serious horsepower. Also, these are rated up to 7,000 RPM, so this big block is definitely gonna be screaming for sure. So next we're going to go ahead and put our intake manifold over here, and then we're going to move over and do our water pump on the front of the motor and our harmonic balancer as well. So we're going to go ahead and get these installed on the motor, and then we can go from there. So let's go ahead and install those. All right, so we went ahead and we got our intake manifold installed on the motor. We also threw on our water pump as well. This water pump is a high-performance water pump for a big block, so they actually put a larger rotor inside of this. So basically just pumps more volume or more water into the motor, so you just get better cooling. We also were able to throw on our timing pointer on the motor as well. This is the MSD timing pointer, so this definitely really looks good with everything all black and silver. It's just gonna look super mean inside the car. So as far as next steps go, is we can actually go ahead and install the motor inside the car. Once the motor is inside the vehicle, we can then at that point put our push rods and our rocker arms on the motor and get everything timed properly just so it's all running right. As far as for our rocker arms, we went with these Comp Cam roller rockers. These things are insane to say the least, so this is going to be awesome when this is all sitting together inside the car. So let's go ahead and we're going to get the motor ready for installation, and we can go from there. All right, so we went ahead and we got the motor up on the cherry picker. So now we're able to put the motor in the car. We also put on our harmonic balancer. So we went with the ATI harmonic balancer. So with the MSD pointer on there, that looks awesome. We got all of our drive set up for our current setup with the pulleys for my alternator and power steering. Eventually, you know, when we go to the next blower, the 871, eventually this will all go away. We'll have a different pulley. So for now, this is ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and start stuffing this in the car. We also went ahead and painted the engine bay in the car. So we got that all prettied up and ready to go. So now when the motor's in there at the show, it'll all look real good. So let's go ahead and start putting the motor in the car. All right, so we got the motor almost sitting in the car. One thing with this though, with how the headers are designed and how they fit in here, it's a lot easier to get the header on the motor and then put the motor in the car than try to fit this header down in here and try to play it around, and it just makes everything way more complicated. So we actually went ahead and wrapped our headers in this black wrap. Now this heat wrap really helps with containing heat inside the engine bay. Especially when, you know, we're getting those high temps, it's really important to try to trap as much heat as possible just so we keep this motor cool and performing at its optimal performance. So this looks awesome. This is going to look great when it's on the motor inside the car. So let's go ahead and start fitting the header on the motor, and then we can finish dropping the motor inside the car. All right, so now the motor is in the car. We got the motor mount bolts in and everything is secured properly, so this is looking awesome. Basically at this point, all that's left to do is our push rods and our rocker arms, and the long block will be assembled. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we can go ahead and start installing our rocker arms and our push rods in the motor. We did go ahead and get everything buttoned up on the underside, so we put the transmission in, torque converter, got the blower on there, carburetor, basically just buttoned everything up so we can get the rocker arms and the push rods installed, and then we can actually go ahead and start the motor. So what we're going to start with is we're going to actually start with putting our push rods in the motor. So you have your exhaust and then your intake push rods. You can see here that the exhaust rod is a little bit longer than your intake, and that's just due to how the cylinder head is designed. Now to install it, we're going to put a little bit of our assembly lube here on the end of the push rod like so. Okay, and then once we get that nice and lubed up, we're going to go over to our head here, and you can see right in the center there's a hole down there. That's actually where your lifter is at, and that's where the push rod sits. So you're going to slide the push rod just through the guide like so, and you want to wiggle it a little bit just to make sure it's sitting perfectly in your lifter, just to make sure it's sitting right. So that is good there. Now as far as the rocker arm installation goes, it's pretty straightforward. So you have your rocker arm here, and then you have a nut that goes on the stud that your rocker arm goes on. So basically how this works here, you just go ahead and put this right on your stud, just like that. Pretty straightforward. And then you take your nut here and you just install it on the end of the stud, and you just tighten that in. And you do have to torque this to spec, so basically you just tighten that in, torque it to spec, and then as we turn the motor over, there is going to be some adjustments that are going to need to be made for our valve lash, so we'll do that next, but this is basically it. Let's go ahead and install them across both sides of the motor, and then our push rods and rocker arms will be installed and the long block will be finished. So let's go ahead and do that. So we went ahead and we got our rocker arms and our push rods installed on the head. We also went with these Isky high performance valve springs as well. So with the combination of these plus our Isky cam, we're going to get about 7,000 RPMs out of this motor. And for a big block, as you all know, that is definitely revving this thing pretty high. Now as far as the tightening slash torquing sequence goes for these, you basically get your intake valve to be fully compressed at the bottom. So that's going to look kind of like that basically. And then your exhaust valve is going to reach its correct preload is what they call it, to reach the absolute zero. So at that point what you do is you go ahead and you just wait for your
push rod itself to tighten up as you tighten this nut here. And then once this gets tightened, you go ahead and go a full half turn, and then we go about another quarter turn right there just to make sure it's nice and tight. And then at that point, with your locking nut here, you tighten this down with a Allen key, and that's it. That's how you install your rocker arm onto the cylinder head. So we have all of our rocker arms installed with our push rods, and with that being said, we just have to throw on our valve covers, and the long block is going to be finished. So let's go ahead and throw on our valve covers, and we'll be done. And just like that, we have our valve covers installed on the motor. I think these turned out phenomenal, and I think with the high lift cam and just how everything looks, it really makes the engine bay pop on this car. So I'm so excited to get here after months of hard work. We finally got the long block finished in the car. If you guys want to hear the motor start, tune into our next video where we're going to be starting this motor so you can hear all these components run and just how nasty it's going to sound. But as always, thank you guys for watching the video. Don't forget to leave a like down below and hit subscribe for more content like this. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next one.